What's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today we are bringing it back to my Chucky marathon of films with
Curse of Chucky.
Now remember, this is my first time watching all of these movies. I'm not a fanboy. There's nothing about nostalgia with this. This is basically me going to see the movie for the first time in theater. Take it or leave it. Now, Curse of Chucky is all about Chucky once again tormenting an entirely different group of people. This time we have a young woman who is paralyzed from the leg down, her sister's husband, their kid, and the nanny. And we don't entirely know why Chucky is tormenting them specifically until the end of the movie. So in a way, this is kind of a horror mystery, and it's not a comedy like Bride of Chucky or Seed of Chucky was. First things first, let's talk about some good things to be found in this movie. This is the scariest Chucky movie I've ever seen. Now hear me out, I didn't think Child's Play 1, 2, or 3, which is the only horror films in the franchise up to this point, were actually scary because there was no subtlety about them. There was no real subtle introduction to Chucky as a character. Either the serial killer or the doll was what it was, and you just had to accept it, and there was no tension building in those movies. And when there was no tension building, there were no scares, because you need that tension, you need that suspense, you need that subtlety, and those movies just didn't have it, and this one did. It had so much subtlety in Curse of Chucky, by the way, that you don't even hear Brad Dourif's voice until 44 minutes into the movie. So even though things are happening in the movie, and you know that Chucky's behind everything that's happening in the movie because you know how Chucky operates, the fact that it doesn't show any of it really helps build that suspense, build that tension, and so when the scares eventually happen, they work. And no, this is not the scariest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. It'll never match my top 10 list, but that tension and that suspense and that buildup really help sell when those jump scares work. So this is the first time in Chucky history that I've actually been spooked about anything that Chucky has ever done, and I can't praise it enough for that. Also, when we dig into some deeper elements when it comes down to this film, I loved how it looked and how it felt a majority of the time. There's some really great visuals towards the end of the movie, though I can't award visuals perfect points exactly because a majority of the movie was typical standard as you would expect. It's just towards the end of the movie there was some really great stuff when it came down to colors specifically that I enjoyed. I specifically liked how they shot the movie, cinematography. They shot it like a haunted house movie. There's a lot of exterior creepy shots at night of this big looming ominous looking house. And even though it's not a haunted house movie, it still helps it feel like it should, like it's a scary movie, and it is. And the same could be said about the music and sound. I didn't love the musical score, but I did appreciate the sound editing, the sound mixing, because that once again goes into that suspense sound. They knew exactly what they were doing in making this movie feel scarier than any of the other movies up to this point. Don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect film. It still has a ton of flaws, especially when it comes down to continuity. But I can't stop praising it for the steps it took towards making it creepier. But let's talk about some of those flaws, because there are a few that are glaring to me, like the continuity thing. I was unsure on how they would continue the franchise after Seed of Chucky, because Seed of Chucky was meta. It took place in the real world where filmmakers were making Chucky movies. And I can tell you right now that this is technically a sequel to that because it references moments in that film. However, it also references Andy Barclay as a victim of one of his assaults, which is the victim in Child's Play 1 and 2 and 3. The problem with that is Andy Barclay is a fictional character that existed in the movies that Hollywood was making in Seed of Chucky. Andy Barclay doesn't exist. The actor who played him does. They can't have Jennifer Tilly play herself in Seed of Chucky, and still have Brad Dourif play Charles Lee Ray, and still have the Alex guy, whatever his name is, still play Andy Barclay. It makes no sense. Be consistent. If you're going to be meta, be meta. If you're going to be part of the original series, ignore that Seed of Chucky even happened. You can't have it both ways. And if it's going to be a sequel to Seed of Chucky, then it still needs to feel the same. It still needs to be self-aware in its humor. Because personally, I found that perfect. I found that to be an example of their confidence in what they are. They knew what they wanted to be in Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, and they embraced the ridiculousness. And for some reason, it went back to seriousness in this movie, and it's supposed to be a sequel to those movies that were just ridiculous. It's as if they lost that confidence that they had, which kind of bums me out because I really did love Bride of Chucky, and I did appreciate a lot of the humor found in Seed of Chucky as well. Another flaw in this movie was the acting. A lot of the acting was like B-movie horror stuff. It was just in your face, bad from beginning to end. Nothing was believable. It's never really been incredible or Oscar worthy or anything like that, but it was believable enough for what they were going for, if that makes sense. And what they were going for in this movie, I feel like they were just trying too hard and they never matched the end goal. So the acting was all over the place, and so was the importance, because you never know why Chucky is even attacking these people towards the end of the movie. And even when you find out, you don't really buy it. You don't really even buy why it was a mystery to begin with. So the payoff isn't really that great, and you never really feel why every character in this house is important to Chucky. But those are the biggest things when it comes down to the negatives. Another thing that I have to complain about, though it is minor, is the look of Chucky himself. There was something about it that didn't quite look right. I didn't fully buy that this was the same character that we've seen in the last 5 movies. It felt newer, felt fresher. It felt like it was a revamped version of Chucky for a remake. I almost thought this was the 2019 remake for a second because he looked a little bit off. You could still tell it was Chucky, but something looked wrong about him. Never once in the movie do I really ever buy that it was the same character as seen in Child's Play 1 through 5. Chucky 1 through 5, whatever. I actually didn't even think the animatronic work done on his face and with the body was even as good as we've seen in the past before too. Maybe that's because this was direct to DVD, I'm not entirely sure, but there was something about the character of Chucky that didn't quite feel right. Overall, though, I would say that it has more positives than negatives. The fact that it's a horror that actually works for the first time in the series is a big plus for me. I rated this movie 68 out of 100 possible stars, 68%. If you're curious on where that ranks as a Chucky film, in second place, right below Bride of Chucky and right above Seed of Chucky. Guys, tell me what you thought of this movie in the comments down below. And as for YouTube, subscribe to me, hit that like button, hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.